Hello, I'm James and welcome to my channel Western Signalman. To celebrate 40 years of Thomas the Tank Engine on the television, I've been building a diorama, and if you've seen part 1, you know I've got as far as building this lovely signal box. Now it's time to build the rest. So, with the signal box complete, it was time to move on to the level crossing. And to do this, I'd have to find some photos of the level crossing, which turned out to be quite difficult. It's not very often photographed or filmed within the series. However, there is a shot of Edward from the episode Percy's Chase that I could use to work out the dimensions and shape of the gate. So, with using some micro strip, I cut it to size and shape, matching the photo references, and then glued it all together. The stop signs are actually made from a Gleamer PGA brake wheel, which I just filled the holes in, sanded it down, and then cut in half to join onto the gates. I think they've come out quite well. Here's the demonstration of the brake wheel that I've used. The gates was a simple job, and I was quite pleased with them. Next job then would be the water crane. This would be built from various parts from my scrap box, including an old piece of water crane that I had in a white metal kit form. It's been in there for many years. I think there was a Southern Region disc code, a piece of plastic tube from a daypole kit, and some few other bits and bobs, just all glued together. And then finally, for the hose that goes into the tank, that's just a paintbrush cover that protects the bristles when you buy them brand new. You can roughly see the shape of it here. And just like that, the pieces were glued together and the water crane was formed. I used an old clock as the base to position the water crane, as you can see here. So with that, you're probably wondering, well, James, you've built gates, you've built a water crane, and not a single time lapse. Well, don't worry, I've got you covered there. I temporarily glued the water crane to an old foam board base and painted a nice dark green. Right, the last job is to build a couple of coal bunkers. So I'm going to try and do it with matchsticks. Just cut them down, glue them to shape, and then sand them to look like the ones on the set. So yeah, just going to do it with matchsticks. See how it goes. If it looks a bit rubbish, I'll have another go in plastic card. But I think it should be okay. Anyway, let's see. Well, here we are then. This is all the man-made structures for the scene now built. The coal bins are finished. I just sanded down the edges and then I flipped them upside down because I thought it looked not tidier and nicer. And I won't pick them up because they're a bit wet at the moment. I've just given them a sort of dirty brown wash just to stain the wood. The water crane, I trimmed it down a bit. It was a bit too tall. So that's more of a acceptable level now, I think. Roughly see it won't stand up its own because the head's too heavy. But yeah, I think I'm going to move on to the road and start building up the scenery. Really, it's yeah, once that signal box is done, it's flown by really. And so I did move on to the road. The road is a Metcalf kit, station platform to be precise, and I'd used some old offcuts to utilise what was needed, and they fitted quite well. And that was the road complete. The level crossing looks quite good, I think, especially its pre-printed card, and it does blend in quite well later on when the rest of the scenery is added. Now, one of the things I hadn't considered was the position of the gates, and I think I got lucky by the fact that when they're set square, because you have to put them in the square positions. Obviously, the gates need to butt up across the road and butt up across the rail tracks. 3 of the posts at least sat on the tarmac. 1 of them overhung, but I managed to resolve that later on. Oh, well, Percy's just shoving some trucks into the siding. We can see that the road is now in place, and I've put the level crossing gates down as well. Because when I measured them up, I realised I actually need to be further away from the line than I originally thought. So this end's fine. They sat on that piece of card nicely. This end, for some reason, they don't. So it must be tapering in without me realising. But there we are. And then I've glued all those parts down. So I'm now going to concentrate on the hill scene behind, which I think I'm going to do by building up a cardboard former to sort of do the edge and make sure it's nice and tidy, so it sort of keeps that nice appealing look of a diorama, and then build the scenery up around it. And as I say, the mud bank there for Percy to crash into when he runs away. So yeah, I'll move on to that. Well, it looks like the snow has come to Sodor, and that is the plaster cloth all applied. Now, if you were paying attention to the time lapse, you'd see that I used dry brown packing paper and kitchen roll, and the idea here was so that it would absorb all the moisture from the plaster cloth and dry it rapidly, because I wanted to get on with the painting. And as can be demonstrated, it worked quite well. Some of the edges were filled in with some kitchen roll, wrapped up, and then dipped into a PVA diluted solution, and just put to the side. They're a bit wetter, but that'll be fine when I get painted. So, talking about the painting, I wanted to try and make things look as close to the scene as possible. When looking at photos, it looks like some sort of scenic mat has been used possibly, but you can definitely see there's a pattern in the ground that's not natural. So, rather than doing my usual paint everything brown, I was just going to paint the track area brown, and the hill area would be painted green. Right, I think that's looking a lot better with that green scatter on there. I've sealed it in place with a coat of static grass layering spray, then just sprinkled on where there was a few bare patches, and then sealed it all up with some very cheap hairspray. So just letting that dry off, but that should all hold in place nicely. Next job then is the ballast. So I hate this job. Most people do hate this job. I've looked around and I think, looking at the ballast they use on season 1, I think it might change in later seasons. But definitely if you look at this photo here of Edward, I think this ballast is pretty much an exact match of what was used on the sets. So I'm going to use this ballast and do the track. There we are, that's the track ballasted, glue's on, so what I'm going to do now is wait for it to dry and then move on to the nice bit of the scenic finishing touches, such as the fencing and the hedgerow, and just paint this hedgerow here as well. It's almost there. Looking quite good, I reckon. Well, the scene, as you can see, has dramatically changed since last time. I haven't recorded it because it was a case of I needed to reference the photos, so you know, sacrifices had to be made. However, you get the general idea. I've added some more scatter, so sort of a yellowy brown around here, as the photos seem to suggest, and then a little more over behind the signal box here, and then a lot of lichen just in the general areas. Now here, I still need to put the dirt pile, and what I'm thinking is I'm going to get a bit of sponge, cut it to shape, and then cover it in brown scatter so that you can run Percy into the sponge at least to recreate a story if you so wished. And then I've just added a few more bits of vegetation at the front. And I felt the ballast, I mean, one of the big problems with the ballast is I've used OO gauge on an N gauge model, so it is a bit coarse and out of scale. So I've tried to blend it in better by toning it down with some black wash, which I think has improved it. And yeah, I think, apart from putting that pile of dirt there, I think there might be a tree that goes here. I have to double check. That's pretty much the scene created, or recreated. So, yeah, I think it looks all right for a little project. Probably do it for background. I might look into doing something like for that. Yeah, as I say, might look into a background, might look into a tree, definitely do the dirt pile there. And then it's just a case of just a few finishing touches, paint that black. And I want to do a storage box for it, so I'm going to look into that too. Well, it's another time jump. As you can see, I haven't recorded me putting any more extras onto this scene, but that's because it's essentially just taking bits and gluing it on, so you can sort of get the idea of how to do it. The scene was looking a bit bare, and it just didn't feel quite right with just the bushes, so I double checked. There are a few trees in the scene. There is one just next to the signal box. So this is a HO scale knock tree that I have then chopped back to get it to N scale size. It looks about right, and it sort of fits the image of the scene, especially when I'm sort of comparing. And then I've put another tree over here because there's a lot of trees and bushes. It's not very obvious in any of the shots, but it's quite overgrown there. So yeah, I've just found this N-gauge tree lying around. I've popped it in there. Then I've taken some of the offcuts from that HO scale tree and just stuck them down so they can represent bushes that are all around the layout. So you can see there's a few more around here. Now we come to the essential part of the scene, the pile of earth that Percy crashes into or is stopped by. So this is a piece of sponge cut to a sort of mound shape, glued to the rails, and then I've taken some golden brown flock
and I've just glued it on. I'm waiting for the glue to dry. As it's sponge, I reckon it's going to take about 2-3 days to dry there. But it is drying. And the advantage of that is because it's sponge and because of the flock, everything should be quite flexible. I'll just poke it a little bit. You can see there's a bit of movement in there. Not enough. Which means that once it's dry, hopefully you can run Percy into the earth without damaging the model. So yeah, I've done that too. I don't think I covered the coal bins. I just added a few lumps of coal in there. I think the coal's probably a bit too large. It's 00 scale. This is one of the problems I've done with this diorama, is that all my scenics is 00. Yeah, I'm very sort of in the mindset that this probably needs replacing at some point, but it'll do for now. The ballast is a bit coarse, but it matches the scene on the TV show, so I have to bear that in mind. More offcuts of the trees on the front, just to improve that scene. There's a lot of sort of bushes and that when you look at the shot. We come over here. There's the man in the box that was kind enough to switch the points of Percy. As you can see him up here, there he is. That's him there. And then just a little extra to the scene, it's obviously not in the story, but I thought it would be nice to add, is there's the Fat Controller. He's arrived in his Audi that he never had in the show. And this is a nice little model by Buggles Kelly Models. They're a small little company that are they're getting bigger. Tom appears at shows with various items to purchase, and now you can find them in shops as well. I've seen them in Tony's of Rugby, so that's one place you can definitely find them. This is a lovely little N scale. I think it's called Director or Railway Director, but we all know who it is. It's also a Topham hat. It's a lovely little model, so I just thought I'd just add him to the scene. And he does come in other scales as well, because I think I've bought the range. So you can see here there's two 00 gauge ones, which I've painted up, one like the TV show and one like the Railway Series books. They'll eventually appear on my 00 gauge layout. And then because I had an impulse purchase of an 00 gauge locomotive, I thought, well, I probably should have an 00 gauge Fat Director. So I bought that one as well. They're very nice little models. So yeah, it doesn't just do obviously the Fat Controller. There's others, characters from movies like Hay Porter and real life stars like Morecambe and Wise. So yeah, take a look at Buggles Kelly. But yeah, this is the scene. I'd say it's pretty much complete. I don't think I need to do anything else to it. I will need to test the track at some point just to make sure everything still runs. But next thing I want to do was the idea of making it fit into a box file. So I have my box file. I've been measuring it up. Now the board fits in, but with the fish plates just sticking out the ends there, it doesn't quite fit in. So I'm in two mindsets. I either have it so it just gets all packed away in here, or I secure the diorama board into the box set and then all the sides fold down, and then you set the track up and you can run the trains around. So I'm gonna have a bit of a think about that and work out in what direction I want to take this. Right, I've had a bit of a think, and I think what I'm going to do is I am going to leave it so that these sides will stay up. I'm just going to cut holes in them so the trains can pass through. Then all this area here will be painted like a sky blue. I'll have a back scene here which folds up, and then that allows you to access the stored track, and then depending on the space I might make it so I can store the loco and wagons up there as well. No room for a controller, unfortunately. That's just one step too far. And yeah, I'll just keep this secured in the box, and then this front flap will come down. So this will be the only bit that moves. So this will come down, and obviously this lid here. Sides stay up, we have holes, take the track out, set it up, and then you've got yourself a nice little sort of diorama train set. So yeah, I'm going to start marking things out, making holes, taking flaps down, and painting things blue, I suppose.
It didn't take me long, and soon the interior of the box was built. Apologies for the close-up there, but it's a two-hand job to open, and the camera's in one of them. So as you can see, I painted the entire interior of the box in a lovely sky blue setting. Then, the storage compartment at the back now holds the locos and track, with the circular track stored underneath. I think this is quite a clever idea, if I do say so myself. The last job then was to make the exterior look like the old VHS. I managed to find a photo of it online, but unfortunately I couldn't get it printed big enough to cover the entirety of the box cover, so I just made a nice grey mount around the edge. I think it looks good enough, and then I've tried to do the side to look as much like the VHS cover as I remembered, although I think the Thomas photo may be the other way round. But still, you get the gist of it, and I'm sure any older viewers that had this video, it's probably bringing back a few memories. I know it did when I found the picture. In particular, the VHS I remember always being a bit of a funny one. It didn't play in every VHS player. I think you had to do something funny with the buttons, if I recall. But that was a long time ago. As you can see, I'm still struggling to open it with one hand. Unfortunately, the paintwork on the top scratches off, and that's because it's sort of a vinyl cover and there's no key to it. But otherwise, I think the setup looks very nice, and I'm rather pleased with how everything has turned out. Maybe if I was to improve it a little bit more, I might add the buildings in the background on the sky scene. One extra detail was just a little bit of information on the front, just stating what the diorama was and the reason for its creation. All in all, I'm quite pleased with this project and how it's turned out. So there's only one thing left to do. Let's set it up and run Percy around. So, if I'm going to run Percy around, it would be rude not to recreate the scene from the story that I've made the diorama for. So let's set it up and get a little glimpse of when Percy ran away.
Can you do it, running?
The man in the signal box could see that Percy was in trouble, so he kindly set the points. Percy puffed wearily onto a nice empty siding, ending in a big bank of earth. He was too tired to care now where he went. "I want to stop! I want to stop! I have stopped!" he puffed thankfully. "Never mind, Percy," said the workman as they dug him out. "You'll have a drink and some coal, and then you'll feel much better." Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a little different to my usual modelling, but I thought, it's the 40th anniversary, can't ignore it really. See Percy stopped on that bit of track that he always stops on. So just bear with me a second. There he goes again, he's a naughty engine. If you have liked this video, please click the like button. If you want to see more, then click the subscribe button. And hopefully I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Well, if you enjoyed that, why not watch another? I've got podcasts, layout builds and exhibition videos, so there's plenty to choose from.